Clerk, call the roll.
Mr. Moore?
Here.
Mrs. Rich?
Here.
Mrs. Gallagher? Mr. Kraftcheck?
Here.
Mr. Parzak?
Here.
Mr. Levens?
The meeting is now open. Adequate notice of the meeting was provided by posting a copy of the time and place on the municipal clerk's bulletin board and mailing a copy of same to the press and the Cape May County Herald on January 4th, 2019. Will everyone please rise to salute the flag? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, today's work session, we're going to start with public safety.
Okay, first up would be the municipal court.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I figure by now most of you had read about the state's dismissal of over, well, close to 800,000 tickets that are 15 years or older. That really did not affect us. We had between the criminal, which we consider borough ordinances, and minor motor vehicle, we had about 450 tickets dismissed. They were so old that the state decided they were dismissing all of them. So, but I didn't want you thinking that we had a whole lot. We did not. Compared to North Jersey, we're pretty slight in the numbers. And there was a big press release about it in quite a few papers. So, and basically, that's my report for the day.
Because I think we were even provided with the list, the entire list. Yes, we did
Yes,
see it.
you,
So many familiar names on that list from many years ago.
you probably still do. Unfortunately, I recognize a lot of those names too from school.
Well, I mean more the police officers, not the accused.
Well, does anybody have any questions for the court?
Nope, you're good.
Okay, next up, fire department.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
The report for January for the fire department, we had 16 fire calls and 7 EMS calls. If you can see from the report, it's quite down from the previous year. But my research is due to we had a storm last January, which increased our call volume. We're right on track with the previous 2016 calls. So the calls included 2 building fires, 2 chimney fires, 3 natural gas leaks, 1 cover assignment, 2 smoke scares, and 6 fire alarms. That's my report.
Thank you.
Thank you, Roger.
Okay, police department.
Good afternoon. The monthly report for January 2019 for the police department, there were 63 motor vehicle stops and 2 persons were charged by the detective division. In terms of an update on personnel, we currently have 3 Class 2s in the wintertime police academy, and they will be expected to graduate sometime in April. We have our 2 new full-time hires. They began recruit training at the police academy in January, and they have an expected graduation date of June. We have 7 Class 2 applicants that will be taking the entry PT test in March. So as we normally carry, hopefully 10 Class 2s for the season, with the 3 we currently have in the winter class, and then 7 will go in the spring.
Will you continue to take applications, or are you done the process of receiving applications?
We're done.
Okay.
But we get quite a few applicants.
Okay.
So if somebody falls through with the psychological or the PT, we have
You do have,
a
okay,
backup list, so to speak.
okay.
1 full-time officer is still away at military training, but he is expected to return in April. Another full-time officer is expected to begin military training on March 11th, and he will be away for approximately 3 weeks, maybe a little shorter than that. So we'll have him at the end of March. In terms of a building update, Phase 2 of the building, the renovation is moving along. It really looks good in there. They have all the walls up, sheet-rocked. The wiring appears to be in. It's sharp looking, really sharp. And we have a building meeting tomorrow at 10 a.m. for future, moving along. That's pretty much it.
And we have, the chief and I have been talking about the ribbon cutting and dedication of the building and looking forward at possible dates. And one of the dates that we looked at is Friday, March 17th, and that's the Friday of National Police Week. So it seems pretty fitting to dedicate the new police department at the end of that meeting. So gives 3, I think we're, is that 4 months, 3-4 months out at this point. So the building is supposed to be completed mid-March, correct?
Give or take.
So mid-March gives a couple of months for punch list things and for the building to actually, everything to be done. Good weather, second homeowners back in town.
So you said March,
Oh, I'm sorry, May.
Oh.
Not St. Patrick's Day, but that would be fun, but no. No,
Looking at you going,
no, I'm sorry, May 17th. May 17th gives us a lot of leeway.
yes.
And we've discussed, also the chief and I have sending out personal invitations to all those police officers who have retired and inviting them to come. And then also there'll be tours of the building itself and some kind of reception afterwards, maybe. We're working on that still. But I think to at least get that date out there so people can get it on their calendars of Friday, May 17th. There is no conflict with the county. I double-checked with that because with that being National Police Week, I wasn't sure if the academy would be planning something or,
Right.
and they all plan to come and support you and Tom's going to sing and dance at this ribbon cutting. We've discussed his role.
Not quite.
We've discussed his role at length. But anyway, let's just get that date there, and then we can also start to work on, like I said, invitations and getting the word out there and making it a really nice event and a town-wide invitation type thing, too.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Beach Patrol, Sandy.
Good afternoon. I don't have a lot to report at this time of the year. A couple things. I gave a list to Public Works recently so they can repair some things on the headquarters and mailed out letters to all the returning guards with any information they need, dates, forms for next summer. And that's all I have. Any questions?
I had asked Jill about, are you accepting applications for beach tag inspectors and guards and stuff like that at this time?
Yes.
Okay.
They can take them off of the borough's website and just mail them into my attention.
Okay.
I'll call them a little into the spring.
There's starting to just be questions even as far as rec for the summer positions. Are we receiving the applications now and so on and so forth? So just tell people yes and do that generic application off the website.
Same thing. I know she's already reached out to all of the former.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, next was OEM. JT apologizes. He had a work schedule conflict, so he could not attend. He did want me to just advise you that he did attend a workshop. He participated in an E-team exercise with the state and county OEM on the 13th of February. And then the other thing that we have under OEM was the warming center agreement with Avalon. They did discuss it and sent us the draft agreement, which everyone has here. I have no problem with it. It's at no expense to the borough. It's only in the event that we actually would have to have the need if we had anyone that was actually homeless. If everyone's okay with it, or if you have any questions on it, we can discuss it. Otherwise, we can bring it forward at the next meeting for approval.
Okay.
Hearing none, solicitor for update on the drone ordinance.
On the drone ordinance, which I don't know if all members of council are receiving the emails that have been coming out asking us to take a look at our drone ordinance. And even prior to those emails starting to come in, I asked the solicitor to take a look at the ordinance to see if there is any sort of state or federal preemption that exists that we should be looking at. So I asked him to fill council in on where we stand on that.
So I have circulated a memo that was written by my office relative to our existing ordinance and with regard to certain federal laws that were signed in by President Trump in 2018. We are in the process of communicating, we've suspended the enforcement of our current ordinance, and we're in the process of communicating with the FAA relative to certain provisions of the ordinance and certain modifications. And I would rather not, in public session, discuss this further, but I'm happy to brief council at an executive session with regard to the substance of the memorandum.
Okay, and we can talk, that's on, we can do that today during our executive session. Okay. Anything more on that? Any questions from anybody? I don't see Dr. Farrell. Stu Farrell here?
I told him 3:30.
Oh, okay, okay. So anything more on public safety?
That's
No.
it.
Okay, we'll move on to R&T, Recreation and Tourism.
First up was the discussion on possible kayak rule changes. Everyone received in their packet a sample of the process that Avalon goes through. With that, there was suggestion that perhaps we amend ours to follow the same process, where it would be, basically, we would give them a time frame that they, all property owners would return them to the borough, and then we would have a lottery on that. I think it's an excellent idea. Avalon's been doing it for a couple years now, right, and they don't seem to have any problem with it.
And it does seem to make it fair
The lottery
and open to
seems-
all property owners.
The lottery seems the fairest way to approach this, if we're not going to go into charging for it, which I don't think we should. So, yeah, it gives everyone equal footing.
And there's some other interesting things in there other than just that, where if you plan on leaving
Yes.
and the spot's going to be open for the month of August, then the next available person could have it for that month. And there's kind of more of a way of keeping on top of those that sit empty.
Yeah, and that's good, because we have had complaints from people saying they see them empty, and yet they don't have the liberty of being able to put their kayaks in there, so adding something like that, I think, is a good resource.
Because what we used to do, I don't know if you're familiar with what we used to do is, well, this past year, you had to, we're accepting it by email and in person. And a long line appeared on March 1st. And then emails were coming in as the person was standing in line. And then Diane was saying, just a minute, and then taking this one, and then back to here, and it was somewhat mayhem. And some residents who they're property owners, and they live a substantial, they live far away, and they can't be here in person. So in reviewing it, it seems like the best way to make it fair for all property owners is if you want one, throw your name in a hat. We'll pull out 96 names, and they get the kayak spaces. And also provisions will be made for if anybody only has a certain amount of time where they actually use it, we're going to ask that they let us know, and then we would go on to number 97 and so on and so forth. So it does seem the fairest way to do it. And Diane was quite thankful.
And it is just for property owners, correct?
Yep.
Pull them up with property owners?
Yep, because they're all gone long before it gets to non-resident, non-property owners. Yeah, they're all taken.
Oversubscribed.
Yeah.
Well, I was glad to see we allow two. I didn't know that, because I thought one per household is,
Right.
I mean, kayaking's kind of a partner thing.
And that was another thing that we saw where Avalon does the one, but then, right, so are you going to, right, that's, we thought the two
Yeah,
kind of made a little more sense as well.
yeah.
So if there's no issue with that, that's one of those things that is time sensitive, where I know we don't like to do this, but we're going to vote on that in the regular meeting because we want to get this stuff online March 1st.
Correct.
Okay. Next up.
Okay, next is the Jitney ordinance. The borough received a letter from the Jitney Association back in January indicating that they would no longer have service on Monday, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays, with the exception of holidays during the summer season. So due to that, I requested to have a meeting with them along with Avalon, because Avalon had received a similar letter. So Scott Wall and I did meet with them, and they had indicated the reason that they were doing, they needed to eliminate those 3 days. It simply wasn't profitable for them due to the Uber and Lyft services that are out there. Those 3 days there seems to be less people in town, and they were utilizing those services. And it was actually, some days it was actually costing the Jitney drivers money to come down, pay the tolls, the gas at going back and forth. They were actually losing money. So they voted as an association to only offer it Thursday through Sunday. Then one of the other things that they wanted to do to try to make it more competitive with the Uber and Lyft during the Thursday through Sunday was to have one set fee of $2. Our ordinance and Avalon's right now says $2 per person after 4 and before 11, and then it goes to $4 a person from 11 p.m. to 4 a.m. So they would like to just charge a flat fee of $3. Avalon did discuss this at their meeting on Wednesday, and according to Scott Wall, they're inclined to remove the rates totally from the ordinance. Number one, it's really the Jitneys determine their fares, so they're looking at it, just taking that whole section out, but they were, in fact, fine with doing the $3, having them do the $3. So if the borough has no issue with that, we would have to amend our ordinance, because we also list specifically what the fees are in our ordinance. So we can either change it to where it just says the $3 regardless, or we can do the same thing that Avalon's doing and just totally remove the fee from the ordinance. I don't know if anyone has it. Anyone have any preference?
I'm not, 100% sure how it operates. So the fees, the Jitney people keep the fees, right? They don't come to
Yeah.
the borough,
Correct.
right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
They're providing service.
Yeah, so I would think the same, they're setting their fees, and
Yeah.
anybody have any other opinion on it?
That doesn't do anything with liability, Mark? I mean, if we set fees in the ordinance, if the borough's setting the fees, does that,
No, I don't think so.
you know?
Yeah, it's unusual that we would set the fee that they would charge.
Right, so we just, and what we do is authorize them to be in town, and then whatever their fees are, their fees are.
Right.
And Ubers don't have to do anything of that, like that, right? If you're an Uber, you just come and go.
They just come and go, yeah. Yep,
So you're proposing that we take it out of the ordinance?
I think that's the
Yeah.
easiest thing, just.
Yeah, I
to
think that
take it
makes
out of
sense,
the
too.
ordinance, Yeah,
Seems reasonable.
yeah.
makes sense.
So if everyone's okay, we can bring that forward the following council meeting to change that. They did indicate that they were going to go back and talk to their association to see if there was any other way to bring the service back for those 3 days that they're eliminating it. but they indicated that if that were to happen, they probably would be coming back and asking for some type of supplemental revenue from the communities, which Scott and I didn't react very positively
It's kind of like the way it originally
originally. Yeah.
started, but that was
Correct,
always
and
the
the-
private.
Yes, it was
businesses.
private, and it was a combination of the business owners and the Chamber of Commerce in Avalon were contributing. And I know Scott's conversation with them didn't indicate that they would really want to do that, so, but we told them, go ahead, go back, discuss it, and, we'll listen to what you have to say, but we couldn't make any promises.
It's a shame to lose them those 3 days, but we can't guarantee them business.
No, mm-mm.
Well,
What can we do?
evidently, the demand's not there.
Right,
So,
Yeah,
right.
I mean,
So what are you going to do?
yeah,
Yep. Okay,
okay.
then the availability of Uber and all, I mean, I don't use it, so I don't know. I mean, that's
yeah.
do down here?
Pretty,
Oh, it's, in the summertime, it's so easy. Yeah,
Okay.
yep.
We'll have to learn.
No.
Okay. Anything else, recreation and tourism? You had quite the lengthy meeting.
Yeah, we did.
Anything to bring, anything else worth mentioning from,
just, we discussed that open weekend in the fall, the Columbus Day weekend, which we normally have an influx of homeowners that, and if it's a good weekend, it's usually a beautiful fall weekend. We discussed implementation of perhaps a jazz festival, music festival, so I think we're in the early stages. This has been discussed previously, but now with Jenny on board, I think we're going to take it a step further and do a little more research on it, perhaps establishing it in-house. We had spoken to a third-party subcontractor regarding the idea. They were going to submit a proposal, and that was last fall. We spoke to them, and we haven't heard boo. So I think the idea was that
We move forward.
perhaps if we move forward with it, we start with something small scale to
Mhm.
see what, like anything, build it out from there as big as we would like to see it at some point. But I think the opportunity's there, and if done properly, professionally, and tastefully, it will be embraced, hopefully for years to come, so.
I think it's a good idea, because that weekend is a 3-day weekend, and people come. Even though the Savor September is the last, or third in September,
3rd in September.
then there's really not a event in October, and that's the prettiest.
there's
event.
nothing in between Savor and
Christmas,
Thanksgiving weekend?
Thanksgiving, right?
Yeah,
except there's a Halloween, little bit of
yeah,
Halloween,
nothing bigger. Okay,
But as we all know, that's the nicest time of the year usually.
yeah.
So I think it would be good to start out small, but try it.
Try researching venues. I mean,
Mhm.
the new theater's a perfect venue.
Yeah.
See what
Okay.
venues would be available.
And Jenny's can give her report.
I actually have 6 special event applications that have been circulated, and they have been approved by all the departments. They're just not in your packages for this meeting. They'll be in the next meeting.
Okay,
It was finished after the deadline, so I was just going to go through them, though.
Yep.
So that you have them.
perfect. Yep.
The first, I'm just going to do them in the order that, date order. So the first one would be April 27th, and it's for the Ocean View at Avalon Condo Association. And all these events we've done previously. This is their annual owners meeting, and they'll be utilizing the multi-purpose room at the Recreation Departments for their annual owners meeting. We'll just be providing 13 6-foot tables and 55 chairs. They're expecting about 50 people at that event. April 28th, this is the second annual, it's Mud Hen Half Marathon. This formerly, it was called the Wild Half Marathon. The client for this is Delmo Sports. They're going to be coordinating with us and the Stone Harbor Police Department to set up a detour. It's a Sunday, April 28th. Stone Harbor Bridge at Ocean Drive will be closed for a half marathon. They come from Wildwood, basically, over that bridge, come down, turn around, and run back. So there'll be a detour at the foot of the bridge there. We'll be providing 2 police officers and cars, one at each end of the road closure. They'll be providing some volunteers there as well, portable toilet, and they are going to be responsible for policing and removing their own trash from that area there. And that they're expecting possibly up to 1,500 runners. And that'll be from 7 a.m. to 11 a.m. May 11th and 12th is the Stone Harbor Garden Club Plant and Bake Sale, which is an annual event. Saturday only, the borough will be providing no parking signage on 96th Street from the Chamber of Commerce to 2nd Avenue. We'll also be providing a tent, 3 10-foot tables, folding chairs at the Waterworks lawn, and then Saturday and Sunday, we're providing no parking signage on 96th Street from the firehouse to the tennis courts, 4 spaces in the parking lot behind the library. And the borough will be providing 10-foot tables, folding chairs, racks for hanging baskets and plants at the firehouse. The garden club, they're going to arrange their own delivery, storage, and security of the plants for overnight, and they're also responsible for policing their own trash on the borough grounds. And the final 3 are from the same client or same vendor. It's Philadelphia Sport and Social Club. They have 3 sports tournaments. May 25th, they have the War at the Shore. It's a touch football tournament. July 27th, they have an adult shore softball classic. It's an adult co-ed softball tournament. And August 31st, they have another War at the Shore touch football tournament. All 3 of those events are at the 80th Street Recreation Field. They are all from, the events go from set up at 8 o'clock Saturday morning. The event goes till 6 p.m. It's about 100 people per event. We are responsible basically just for grooming the fields prior to them getting there, removing any, if there's a soccer goals are out there, we have to remove those. But they're responsible for lining the fields, and same thing, just kind of dealing with their own trash as well. No food or anything, they have no food vendors at these events as well.
And all of them have done the gambit, all been signed off on, so we can, in 2 weeks, we can approve them.
Yeah, they've all been.
Good.
And as I said, all of these we've done before as well. None of them are new. Any
Good.
questions, or are we good?
Questions on any of them? Okay.
And Tina's on her way. Unfortunately, she was held up at the rec center.
Okay,
Can I back up to public safety just
of course.
for a minute? Did we talked about the getting North Wildwood's ordinance on the no wake
Yes,
on 96th Street?
yes.
See if
And
we
that
could
was just
implement a certain.
reviewed by the prosecutor, and he's made suggestions on a couple changes, which we will tweak, and we should be able to bring that forward
Okay,
the next meeting.
that's great. That's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah, he got back to me, I want to say Thursday or Friday, with some changes. With that,
You want to just jump back when Tina comes?
yeah, unfortunately, though, Stu's not here yet either.
Okay.
I told Lenore she could relax, but I don't know if she has anything to add or not.
I'll take 2 more minutes.
I think Parzik's got more to say.
Go for it.
I think it's good for the people to know, though, that I think you did send out the second letters to the low bulkhead property owners.
Yes,
Just as a reminder that, you had 2 years since the ordinance went into effect. We did send you the first letter. This is just a follow-up letter 6 months later saying this didn't go away. You have till
it's the
certain
full-
time to get your bulkhead up to where it needs to be. So I think that was a good thing to do so that
Yes,
we don't get to the end of the 2 years and people say, gee, I forgot all about it, or so.
Yes, it was a friendly
So,
reminder
Yeah.
to them.
Does Lenore have anything from Natural Resources, or we're going, it was Stu going to do the bulk of the time?
We
I was
counted on
figuring that he
Sue,
would
but
talk.
She can,
So the Natural Resource Committee met, I don't know when, about a week ago, week and a half, 2 weeks? Recently,
Yeah.
given that I don't have mine, and discussed a few issues and topics, one of which was scheduling the beach sweeps. They're set for April 20th, and they're coming up.
We have them today?
Yeah, you have them on your list, they're coming up, and they'll be organized as they have historically been with the borough, the POA and the Wetlands Institute working on some of those things. We were able to get reporting from last season with the actual item numbers and all that, and Kim has that for inclusion in newsletter as well as in some of the Clean Communities grants. It's important, the volume of materials collected and where they're collected and things. So that's moving forward for, I think, the third week in April. and
yeah,
that'll be-
April 13th and October 26th.
So that'll be as per annual on that. The couple other things the Natural Resources Committee was talking about was we're getting ready to close the trail at the annual closure on March 1 for bird resting at the sanctuary. The Holly Path will close, so the guys are getting ready to take care of that, and that's just, again, a standard on track. We talked about, last time I was here, we talked about the Facebook, the challenges with getting access back to Facebook, and yay, we have access to Facebook.
Oh, that got rectified? Good.
Yeah, so, and right now, the Bird Sanctuary Committee is looking at the changes that need to be made to that, and those will be, we have a process for getting that information to Kim, who will then get it to whomever is going, I think Jenny's going to update that. So we do finally have control on that, so that's a good thing. It took a long while, but it's a good thing to finally have access to, because that's it's
Yeah, a few
clearly
years
the
until-
And that's
Facebook
going to be
page.
something that Jenny's going to be taking over, like the posting and the monitoring messages? Good, okay.
Yeah, so we just right now need to take down what's there and feed new material there, and there's a committee of the Bird Sanctuary Committee working on that right now. Okay?
Good.
I think that's, anything else you wanted me to touch on? I guess we're still working with some of the beach, thinking about the beach and how to manage boat landings and things like that. There's been some ongoing discussions. There's another meeting coming up to continue to explore opportunities to strengthen and clarify some of those rules and how we might want to manage them. The Beach Stewards Program is moving forward. The applications are open right now for receiving applications for that. And we're not in hiring phase yet, but we're in that mode. Okay?
All right, that's it.
And Tina's here. One quick question, Lenore, just I saw an article in the paper about the stealing or obtaining of the terrapins and selling them. Does that happen around here?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And actually, the Institute provided quite a bit of support to that. There's actually quite a bit of trade, illegal trade in terrapins. It's one of the reasons that the state changed some of the ordinances and trying to manage that. People tracking nests, taking eggs, finding small terrapins and taking those as well. Yeah, there's been quite a bit of
And I saw
activity on
it
that.
said in there that the more, I guess, based on the shell itself, could get more money.
Yeah, they're just, part of it's a pet trade and part of it is actually food trade in Asia. They're shipping them out there. Yeah, it's quite something you don't think about, but.
No, I didn't think about it at all till I saw the article, and I wondered if it was something that, that you ever, has been your experience, you're coming up against that at all here, or is it something that we're
Yeah,
seeing
absolute-
down here?
It absolutely is. We-
Really?
Yeah, and we work closely with conservation officers to try to identify locations, protect them. They'll call us in. Every once in a while, they'll actually get a fairly big capture. They'll catch somebody, and then they have, what do you do with 1,200 terrapins, and we have to help them. try to
Oh, okay, then they
relocate 'em and-
contact you.
Yeah, where
Makes
do you
sense,
put them,
okay.
and it's hard, you don't really want to move animals around like that, because they just, they have their own set of, it's kind of like Montezuma's Revenge kind of thing. They have their own parasites and things that are fine in
Right.
the local population when you move them to other places. So trying to figure out where they're from and getting them back to,
Right, you don't want to dump them just anywhere.
yeah, and you
Right,
got to put them in the
exactly.
appropriate places, not overload one area and all that stuff. So we actually quietly do a lot of that work with conservation officers
Okay.
statewide, so,
Okay.
yep.
Good work.
See somebody doing weird stuff, it's probably worth noting. I mean, those
Yeah.
they are protected. They're protected species, and people do, unfortunately, sometimes not do the right thing
Yeah.
with wildlife.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay,
Bouncing back to R&T.
okay, yep. Tina?
All right, so I had the opportunity last Thursday to meet with the Recreation Committee. It was a little lengthy, but there was obviously a lot of stuff that we needed to catch up on. So we talked about the addition of some camps coming to town, which is really going to be great for our culture. And we talked about bringing Powerhouse Field Hockey, which is ran by two All-Americans. So it's definitely, they played at Duke and one played at, I think, UMBC. So they got some college athletes coming in. They played on, the USA team. So I think that that's going to be a huge draw to some of our summer programming. And then also we added, hopefully going to add an Exit Zero girls lacrosse camp. I know that a lot of people have been, although Avalon's not that far, but they've been complaining that they have to go to Avalon to do a lacrosse camp. So I'm trying to bring that down here. And then we also talked about adding flag football to our clinic offerings in replace of Frisbee. And then also increasing the age offering for pickleball, because we just feel like 4 years old playing pickleball is probably not as age appropriate as what it should be. So we're gonna do like 7 to 10 years old, and then do another offering for like the peewees,
Okay.
for like a more structured sport. And then also, there was a concern that was brought up to me about the Cornhole Wednesdays at the elementary school, that it wasn't really getting as much as participation as what it should. So I had suggested, and I also reached out to Sandy about maybe getting beach volleyball courts on like 82nd by that opening. And then maybe we can have like a family beach night where we can bring cornhole boards down, and then there'll also be like a beach volleyball. Just kind of capitalizing on the fact that we are a seashore town, and be able to use our, beach facilities. A lot of it was, I think, because of the location of where the cornhole was being played at the elementary school.
Right,
I
you get
think
more people on the beach.
yeah.
Don't we have spots for where the nets are up all the time, or no, on the beach? No?
We did in the
Not.
past, but we have not
Okay.
in a while.
So, just obviously, we have to talk to Public Works too with their concern maybe about, the upkeep of the sand and everything. But that was just a suggestion, and I hope that increases the participation of that, because it'd be cool to get everyone together around.
And you were thinking 80th Street-ish.
Right,
Yes.
not exactly by like, where the 82nd Street, kind of like 81st and a half
Yeah.
Street.
Between 80th and
81st and a half
Right.
Street. That's a new street in town,
Right.
81st and a half.
So there's an official 82nd Street
Yeah.
walkway, but then there's another walkway that's kind of in between, so off of that. And then we talked about suggestion of membership cards to be issued to pickleball and tennis members. A lot of them have said, oh, I'm a member, and then they have been a member like 5 years ago, so trying to
Oh,
keep up with
scofflaws.
that, yeah. So that's just been a suggestion that we discussed. And then also we also talked about the purpose and what we're kind of expectations to come out of the pickleball and tennis building, and how the operations are gonna run out of that.
When's that building gonna be done?
They are out there on the coldest days too, so the walkways are now being concrete and everything, so hopefully soon. Yeah.
All right. First or second week of March, okay.
Yeah. And then we also talked about some of the unfortunate safety concerns with the 82nd Street playground. Just about like some of the fences are rusting. That's been brought to our attention, especially the rust with the archway and stuff like that. So we're looking into more details with that, about replacing it and kind of where we can move forward with that. And then we talked about, obviously, all of the outdoor basketball courts and the resurfacing of our playing areas, just for a safety standpoint, not just aesthetics. That's pretty much it.
Good job, very informative, thank you.
Yeah, that was the slow version of our meeting.
Definitely have a good handle on
The cliff notes.
where we have any deficiencies in.
Right.
Tina went over, I think, everything with a fine-tooth comb, and has everything covered that needs attention, and has prioritized,
Right.
what's immediate safety concern and what's more cosmetic down the road, so.
And how about the advisory board? Is that back together and set your?
We are, we're just kind of setting out dates
Okay.
and stuff with that, and then also, obviously, trying to button up together the people that make the, because I know that we have to add a high school.
Yeah, and see who we have to add, if we got any
See who
open
we-
seats and what we got to add there.
See if
Okay,
we can get that
good.
together.
So you've settled in.
I have,
You have settled in. Good. Good for you.
thank you.
You settled, she's off and running.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah.
It's good to have both of them, Jenny and Tina. It's great. So,
Next up, Mr. Farrell is in the house.
anxiously awaiting your arrival, Dr. Farrell. That's it, right? Nothing left for recreation, tourism, no questions, issues, problems? We can now talk to Dr. Farrell.
Well, glad to be here. Pretty close to 4 o'clock, was it?
I think we're good time-wise. Perfect.
We're fine.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah.
Which would you like
We
to
got-
hear
we got-
about first, the lagoon situation or the oceanfront?
Does council have a preference? Lagoon versus oceanfront?
Whichever one's better.
You choose.
Okay, then go with the lagoons, because this was on top.
Okay.
We completed a bathymetric survey of all of the lagoons dredged from North Basin all the way down to Paradise Cove. December 18th of this past year. And we compared those results to what the company that completed the survey after dredging provided us, that was Cowie, Ocean and Coastal Consultants, gave us their data they took after they completed the dredging, which they did serially as they finished each lagoon. So it started in, believe they started in February of 17 and completed in early 2018 was the last lagoon, or maybe it was late 17 when they finished the last one. Anyway, that was the data they gave us after dredging. So the first year, a year ago, we surveyed them, and we had some difficulties matching our survey with their survey because they had run 50-foot apart lines across every lagoon, just chopped it into little tiny pieces because they were certifying the payment of the dredging with that. And we went way wider than that for just the survey purposes, and we said, so we scaled it back. We spent 2 days at it this time and did it much closer spacing. And bottom line, everything is in pretty good shape out there. We found that the main basin inside of each lagoon was at the same depth that it was dredged, and actually, in some cases, between 1/2 and 1 foot deeper than they had dredged it. Probably because they'd fluffed up a lot of sediment that then compacted over the next 18 months, and basically they were within the limits of the dredging, so it just got a little deeper. New material is appearing at the entrances. Nothing to be concerned of at the moment. The worst spots here and there are about plus 2 feet above after the dredging. And the report shows each of them in green where sediment has accumulated. North Basin, there's a spot right at the entrance on the south side of the entrance. A small amount of fill material. Yellow in the pictures indicates no change. Green indicates water shallower than it was after it was dredged, and red indicates it's pink is a little deeper than after it was dredged. South Basin, again, at the entrance, there's very minor, less than 1 foot of new material, but it's spread across the whole thing. The other thing we noticed was at the north end of these basins that the main channel, Great Thoroughfare, is moving towards Stone Harbor. So the main channel is getting deeper. The edge is moving closer towards the built side of the bayshore because each of these entrances goes into deep water faster than it did in the previous year. So, well, that's not a bad thing. It's just the only problem I see if this continues is how deep the bulkheads are founded along the bayshore on the main thoroughfare if, in fact, it's some of the bulkheads, we came back along the edge of the bulkheads, in some places it was like 15 foot deep, 10, 15 feet from the bulkhead. So, I mean, it probably was shallower at the bulkhead, but still, that scouring might be a problem down the road somewhere. Snug Harbor, basically the whole inner part of it is between 0.5 and 1.0 feet deeper than it was after they dredged it, with a few scattered spots at the entrance of new sediment appearing. The Shelter Haven, further south, this is an oddball. We don't understand exactly how it got to be the way it is, but the inner part of the central portion of the lagoon is in some places 25 feet deep. We kind of guessing that somebody sat there and dug deeper because they wanted the material for something else on land years and years ago.
Been there a long time.
Yeah.
That hole.
That's been there quite a while, I'm sure. At the entrance, new material, between 1/2 and 1 foot of new material is at the entrance. The inner part is basically fine. And besides which, all of it is deeper than 10 feet anyway, so, doesn't matter. Moving on down to the next pair is the set, which is the basically Pleasure Bay and the Stone Harbor Lagoon. Both of these, Pleasure Bay and Carnival Bay, they have a single entrance. And we were quite surprised to find that single entrance has gotten deeper, which was a big problem before dredging. It was like a foot deep at low tide. And it has gotten deeper by a foot or two. The same shoal to the south of the channel, however, is still there, and still you can stand up at low tide, no problem, on wet sand. But the two lagoons are basically unchanged. Pleasure Bay is almost all yellow, which indicates no change at all, plus or minus 0.2 foot, no change. And Carnival Bay is a little deeper in the inner part, but basically no change. Any new sediment is right at their entrances. So again, it's less than a foot of new material in place. And then coming on south along Sanctuary Bay and the elongate Paradise Bay channel that goes through the Bay Islands and the marshes, those remained basically unchanged, with a little bit deeper channel than after they finished dredging. So fundamentally, things are holding up pretty well. There was an awful lot of time and money spent to get them cleared out, but 18 months later, things are basically just fine.
That's good news.
Yes,
Very good news.
very good, because Ocean City is spending $20 million in the next year or so doing essentially the same thing, and Margate and Longport are in the initial stages of planning to do the same thing. So it's the biggest question is, what do we do with this stuff? Same old story. Where does it go, and what home does it find?
So we just, next year, same thing, we just continue to monitor and see?
Yes.
Okay.
If that's your pleasure.
That is good news, yep.
We'll
Okay.
do the same thing again in late fall, after the boats are gone. It's so much easier to do it when there's no boats.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Even so, what are you doing out there? Well, we're surveying the bay. Oh, okay. We don't need that question 40 times in each lagoon. Okay, the oceanfront.
Well, just one, any questions? Any questions specific to dredging? Well, everybody's good? Okay. Moving on.
Okay. The oceanfront. After Hurricane Sandy, there was federal disaster money that came in and put sand on the beach. Most of it derived from Hereford Inlet in Stone Harbor. Then, after the hurricane, there was a series of northeasters that plagued the Jersey coast, serially after that, the worst of which was January 23rd of 2016. Actually, the flooding down in West Wildwood was worse than Hurricane Sandy. So that did not do well with everything. And then in the spring of 2018, there was a series of northeasters once a week, March and April, all the way to Mother's Day in May, where northeast storms, like weekly schedule on them. And the cover photograph I picked for this year was actually taken by your Public Works folks following the worst of the March-April series, which lasted 1.5 day with winds up to 55 miles an hour, and it cut vertical scarps into the dunes from 106th Street south to the terminal groin at South Point. So there were a number of emergency measures put into place, and the best thing that happened was that the Army Corps came back to do a restoration sand placement, both in Avalon and Stone Harbor. But we ran into a open warfare with the Coastal Barrier Resources Act, where they refused to allow federal dollars to be spent removing sand from Hereford Inlet Barrow site to place it outside of the zone defined as the CBRA, Coastal Barrier Resource Unit. Avalon sued. That lawsuit is still in progress. The other avenue they're approaching is to get the New Jersey delegation in Washington together to actually change the regulation, because in the initial dredging for Stone Harbor back in the 2003, it was fine. They gave them, the Fish and Wildlife Service gave the Army Corps carte blanche, mine away, have a ball, put it up in Stone Harbor. It's coming back anyway. And if you remember your beaches in 1991, 92, things were in pretty bad shape, which is why South Point basically disappeared as an emerged tract of land to walk on. And so after the beach fills started in 02, 03, and then again repeated in the latter part of that decade, and then after Sandy, South Point is now 7,000, 8,000 feet long. Unfortunately, it's the sand that got pumped onto Stone Harbor's beaches, but that's where it ends up going. So we keep making the case to these folks that this is a closed system. The sand isn't going to Wildwood. The sand isn't going back to Hereford, to Townsend's Inlet. It's coming back to Hereford. We dig it up and put it back up there, and it comes back again. We'll see how that goes, because both the city of Wildwood, North Wildwood, is in the same bind you folks are. They cannot use federal dollars to pump sand onto their oceanfront beaches. Now, the state's fine. The state can do it. And that's what happened in this most recent case. The state pumped sand to the southern beaches of Stone Harbor, and then they pumped the sand from Townsend's Inlet all the way down to the northern beaches in Stone Harbor at the added cost of about $5.5 million additional money. And we've made that point very clear to the folks in Washington that are saying, you know, well, you're costing everybody more money doing it this way. And it's, well, scientifically it's silly, because the sand is the same sand. You're getting it back every cycle 2 to 4 years later. And so the inlet's fine. I mean, there's at least 25 million yards of sand, less than 10 feet of water between South Point, the offshore, and city of North Wildwood. 25 million yards of sand out there. It's been there ever since they had the little fight over the RV Nancy and the gunpowder in Turtle Gut Inlet in 1777, or whenever that was. Any event, the sand was put back in 2018. It was close to 730,000 cubic yards net to the borough's beaches. And as of the fall of 2018, basically the data shows that between June 18 and November 18, you actually gained 25,000 yards after the fill was done. And then taking it from the year to year, which was the fall of 17 to the fall of 18, the net loss was 46,000 yards. The length of the beach is about 2.5 yards per foot of shoreline. So it was a very modest loss. Essentially, you have in all of the numbers that went into, let's see, I said, since the completion of the emergency fill in 2013, that added 674,000 cubic yards. The losses from the ocean beaches and near shore, 13 into 14, 188,000, 14 to 15, 305,000, and 292,000, 15 to 16. Then 16 to 17, the New Jersey and USACE fill put 827,000 back onto the beach, yielding a net change over 5 years of 40,000 cubic yards plus. So after Hurricane Sandy, you are now, as you were after the first repair was done after Sandy, plus 40,000 yards to the good. And this year so far, knock on wood, there have been very few northeast storms in the ocean. They've gone over us to the west, and tomorrow is going to do the same thing. That's why it's going to rain. After it snows, it's going to rain. And so it's not going to generate strong northeast winds to affect the beaches. In fact, we did the survey at the beginning of December, and it basically looked like a summer beach out there in terms of the bars offshore and the berm width, and the dunes were fine. There was no damage to them at all. And to my knowledge, everything has remained fairly much that way through January and this far into February. So the project that was most recently finished is still all in place.
Wow.
And that's remarkably
More
good.
good news.
That's good news, yes. Very good news.
Okay.
Yeah, really.
Questions? Anybody got questions, comments?
So that, Doctor, that's being worked, right? The getting sand from Hereford Inlet, that's a problem that's being worked on by?
It's being worked on. The attorney for Avalon, we've been speaking with a guy by the name of Marlowe Incorporated. They're a lobbying firm that deals with coastal problems. And Avalon's retained them to pursue change either legislatively or through the delegation making an impression on the folks. See, what happened was in 2013, they got a bunch of new lawyers in the Fish and Wildlife Service. And these guys reinterpreted the CBRA legislation. They reread it and said, we read it as no sand can leave for any purpose the unit boundaries. And the unit boundaries go to the terminal jetty in Stone Harbor to the seawall in North Wildwood. And it goes out to 30 feet of water offshore, which includes all the borrow areas. And we're saying, look, that's 2 miles from your bird nesting area, 2 miles. Why don't we just sort of carve out, what we're trying to get them to do is carve out the borrow areas, which are about maybe 100 acres of the offshore in 10 feet of water. That's the sand that goes to the beaches. We're not going to take any other sand. That's it. It's what's in that area. And we've been surveying it since 2009 for the state DEP. And we found that when they dredge, they're allowed to dig to 26 feet. After they dredge, there's a nice big circular sort of 26-foot deep hole. And 8 months later, no hole. You know, in some cases it's only, well, the last time we did it, we had absolutely flat, no waves at all, and it was a good thing because the water was 4 feet deep under us at high tide through almost half of the borrow area. There's enough sand out there to put 1 million yards of sand on Stone Harbor if you wanted it. and it's plenty. Now, the problem is moving it south from Townsend's is, that's a much smaller area to take sand from. And to take 500,000 or 750,000 yards out of there, in addition to what they take for Avalon, it's gonna be hurting Sea Isles beaches to replace it, because that's who's gonna give it up, to put sand back in Townsend's Inlet. Now, yes, in the long term, there's a project in the books for North Wildwood. It's a federal project. It's in the final stages of design and acceptance by the Army Corps to go to construction. And that's a different kind of project. There's no dredging involved. They're going to mine sand from Wildwood Crest and southern Wildwood off the beach itself and pump it up to the city of North Wildwood and then let it go back, because that's what happens. Cressy Avenue is the border street between Wildwood and Wildwood Crest, and that profile has advanced since 1986, 700 feet seaward. There's a whole city block that now out there in front of Cressy Avenue that wasn't there when we started work for the state. So that's where the sand is going from Hereford Inlet, and it ends up between the jetties at Cold Springs and the closing of Turtle Gut Inlet back in the 1920s, and whatever sand is leaving Hereford Inlet. The Wildwoods are, fat city in terms of sand most places, except the very north end of North Wildwood. So that's the way it stands. And right now, South Point is in, excellent condition. It really is. It's 7,800 feet long now, as opposed to almost goose egg 10, 15 years ago.
Okay.
Great. Fantastic.
Questions?
I'll leave these copies with you, since I brought them for references for me, and I can certainly leave you.
I guess the only other thing is if you had any update on the sensors that you've installed. I know you've taken a
Well,
couple.
yes, the data has been read. We've got, the information is, we have it. We've been, 90 days and 180 days, we've collected the data. We have 270 coming up, and then the year end. And then we put it all together. Yes, there've been, I forget how many incidences there were in the sensors, but it is well over 50 separate events that are recorded. As the deepest one, I think, was like 1.5 feet, and that was in this March northeaster in 2008. No, it was, I'm sorry, it was September of 2018. That was the worst event so far. We've had no flooding in the past 3 weeks, although it was a full moon last night and tonight, so if there's northeast, there will be nuisance flooding. This morning, going into Atlantic City, it was just at the edge of the road where it always comes to flood the street and Ventnor. So yes, it's a spring tide, and it's fortunately fairly calm out there, which is good.
Okay, wonderful. Anybody have any questions?
No.
Anything else?
Okay.
No? Okay.
Okay, well,
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Appreciate it.
thank you.
you very
and,
much. All good
yeah.
news.
Yes.
We're not accustomed to getting all good news.
That's great. Well, it's been a happy new year, so there you go.
Thank you. So, anything more for natural resources?
I think we're
That's it.
covered.
We're covered? Well, we have time to do what annoys the clerk and go into executive session at this time, rather than at the end of the regular meeting. How does she feel about that?
Doesn't bother me.
So we can do that, because we have plenty of time to cover some, because we got a couple of issues we need to discuss in executive session, so we could go in now, come back out at 4:30, resume the council, or then we'll do the council meeting, and then go back into the executive session at the conclusion of the council meeting.
So we're going to go in and out?
So I think we're going to end up going in and out, yes. I think based on the amount of time that we're going to need. So I don't know if that means 2 resolutions. Do you keep a resolution open?
No, that's two separate.
Okay.
We gotta change all the numbers. We can't show
So
it.
tell me what my number is.
41.
Okay, stand by. Stand by. This is going to be 41? Okay. So, at this time, we're about to consider a resolution to go into private session. We would appreciate it if you would all remain seated until the resolution has been acted upon. At the conclusion of the private session, we will come back in the public session for the purpose of either taking action as a result of our discussion in private session or to simply adjourn. It is also possible that someone might bring up some other item of business in public session after we come back from private session. Resolution 2019 S41.
I make a motion that 2000 S41 be adopted.
Clerk, call the roll.
Mr. Moore?
Yes.
Mrs. Rich?
Yes.
Mr. Kraftcheck?
Yes.
Mr. Parzak? Mr. Levens?
Yes.
And for the record, Mr. Solicitor, if you could just put on the record what we will be discussing in executive session.
We'll be discussing a potential contractual matter and also matters covered by the attorney-client privilege.
Thank you.